In this first session, we're talking quite a lot about metaphors, and it may be a bit strange, but it's important both in terms of understanding complex ideas about language and language learning, and also in understanding modes of interacting with computers. And so when we use metaphors, actually in this first unit, we're talking about three different kinds of metaphors. Metaphors or framing in language use, where we say things like take steps to do something. Metaphors related to interactions with computers or software or sites, and that's what we're going to talk about here. And the third area is metaphors relating to approaches to computer-assisted language learning. Many of you are very familiar with one metaphor for interacting with computers, and that's the desktop metaphor. They say there's actually a division in people. You may be in the older generation in being very used to kind of the mouse and the desktop metaphor, rather than the more iPhone, smartphone, touch kind of way of interacting that the younger generation are most used to. Anyway, I want to think about these different ways of interacting with computers, and to help us do that, I want to kind of stand back and think about the actual metaphor. How we interact with the computer. And so one way into this, let's look at an older way of interacting with the computer, the command line. This is still lurking in many computers, including Macs. And so for the command line, you're just essentially typing commands. So if you want to copy files, make a backup of a file, you perhaps type copy file and make that copy, call it file backup, something like that. So you have the command and then the arguments to the command. Or if you want to know what kind of files you have, what kind of directories you have, or folders, you type dar and then you see what you have. Or you can type help, always a good one, and this gives you a list of all the commands in this particular user interface. So we've seen the copy command here. We can do various other things. We can rename files, replace files. We can get some kind of information, so ask what version of the software, version of Windows is currently installed, and so on. So this is kind of like a extension from the typewriter metaphor, perhaps, or perhaps thinking about machines which have labels next to some button or something like that. It's a very basic type your command into the computer, and the computer responds to that typed command. And it's possible to think about different ways of interacting with the computer, what the possibilities are for humans. One will be to speak to it, and that's going to be quite common perhaps in the near future, where there's some voice recognition and you give commands to the computer, kind of like giving commands to a dog by just using a certain number of words that the computer recognizes, and then it performs the action so you ask of it. The other one's the touch screen, and you know that perhaps from if you're using the iPhone or from some information kiosks, or perhaps the videos in some aeroplanes where they have a touchscreen interface. So that's kind of like pressing buttons on other machines like Coke machines or whatever. I suppose we could potentially look at places on the screen and perhaps blink to activate some command or something like that. Be a little bit cumbersome. In the future, perhaps we can just think about the actions we want performed, and the computer would somehow pick up our brainwaves and act on that. But these are all, the main thing is these are all parts of the interface. You know, I'm going to ask you to think about the desktop metaphor, the desktop interface, but the main thing is to think about is that it is a metaphor, that it's not the way the computer is working. When you're dragging something across the desktop, then there's nothing inside the little box where there's things dragging around. It's a way of interacting with the computer. It is a metaphor. And one thing we think about is how good that metaphor is. We get very used to it, but is it coherent? Does it hold up? Is it efficient? Is it one that you like? And then we can use that to think about other metaphors. If you want to create software or create a website or something like that, then you have to think about some coherent metaphor.